Jeff Wilson started covering the Texas Rangers in 2008, though he'll never forget 2021. Out on his own, he decided it was time to do a podcast, but his wheels were spinning until a nerd came along. There's no going back now. Welcome to the Texas Rangers Baseball Podcast. Here's your host, Jeff Wilson, and the recliner nerd himself, John Moore.
Hey everybody, and welcome to the Rangers Today Baseball Podcast. This is episode number 80, and today it is Josh Sneed. He is a stand-up comedian, huge baseball fan, Cincinnati Red fan.
Right.
He's going to be joining us from Cincinnati here in a little bit, but right now we do what we do first, and that's go to the big leagues. Big thanks to Premier Properties for the Premier Properties studio that we're in, and Frisco Rough Riders, who are the sponsors of our guest, and we'll have a little ad before he comes on. Big League Club.
Yeah.
Okay. I think we all thought they were going to be better.
Yeah.
I think we all did.
Yeah.
They are 12-6.
Right.
Last 10. No, this is Friday, by the way. This may not come out till Saturday or Monday. I don't know. They're 12-6. They're 8-2 in their last 10. They've won 4 in a row. Mm-hmm. They've just come off a 5-1 road trip.
Yep.
Yeah, they're okay. Right?
Yeah, I mean they're definitely better. You know, they are in a very soft spot of their schedule.
Sure. Yeah.
And
it's going to stay soft.
Yeah, they're 6 of their last 9 games have been against the Royals.
Right.
And the Royals are no good. That's just the truth. All right. But a good team also
wins those games
and wins them like the Rangers won them. They dominated the Royals in every facet. You know. Right. Starting pitching was better. Bullpen was better. Offense obviously was better. It's an encouraging sign. Of course, the sweep there at Kauffman Stadium earlier this week came on the heels of a winning 2 out of 3 at Minute Maid Park. The Rangers hadn't won a damn series in Houston
since 2018.
2018, July of 2018,
and they dominated.
Yeah, it was good. They know how to. One thing you can say is they know how to win tight games. You know that the Sunday night game was 0-0 in the 7th,
right?
And they ended up winning it going away.
Right.
One of those Royals games, the start that Evaldi made was close after 5, and then they pulled away. Team wasn't capable of doing that last year.
No, they were not.
And you know, a lot of it was that the pitching didn't keep them in it.
Right.
But some of it was that they didn't know how to produce a run.
They didn't know how to, what do they call it, pass the baton. They didn't know how to do that and go forward doing that. And you know, what you were saying on going into that this team.
But they're better. You know, the rotation is built. You can say it's built for them to win, but it's also built for them to avoid long losing streaks. It's going to be really hard for 2 teams to beat the Rangers 5 times in a row with this rotation.
Right.
Somebody is going to put out the fire.
Right.
You know, and in the last couple of years, you had to wait for Kyle Gibson, you know, a couple of years ago. And last year, you had to wait for Martin Perez.
Right.
You had to wait for those guys and think, okay, maybe we got a chance. Maybe
to stop the bleeding.
If you're the Rangers, thinking maybe we've got a chance to win this game because this is our guy. And you can say, oh, Jacob deGrom, we should win this game. Martin Perez, we should win this game. John Gray, win.
Haney should keep us in this game.
Yeah, exactly.
No matter who he's facing, he should be able to keep it close.
Yeah.
If you can get that ace starter, pitch count up, and get him out of the game, if Haney can hang us around within a couple of runs, we should be. I mean, that guy is so different than what it was last year.
Well, and you know, even if something were to happen, you got to feel good about. Hey, I think Dane Dunning's going to keep us in this game.
Man, he's been outstanding.
And you know, there are a couple things that happened here the last road trip. John Gray got hit in the forearm by a 109-mile-an-hour line drive.
That's an ouch.
Holy cow. The good news is he's supposed to make his start. We're recording here on Friday the 21st, and he's supposed to start tonight. Jacob deGrom left his start Monday in Kansas City early with wrist soreness, which you never hear about.
Right.
And he thinks he's going to make his start. I think he throws his bullpens on Friday, 2 days before his start. So today would be his bullpen day. So we'll see. But yeah,
he's played catch this week though, and said everything.
He's fine. And you know, I wonder with what he's been through and the media market where he was, and you know, this is a national star,
right?
You know, he's the best pitcher in the world when he's healthy,
right?
If he's a little hypersensitive to that, but he also understands, you know, maybe he's had something in the past that he thought was a little turned into something major. So
his thing seemed to be, though, he felt discomfort and he didn't want to change
his delivery
to compensate for a little. And he said, and I think in his mind he thought, we're early in the season, why don't we just, they were ahead in the game.
Yeah.
Maybe let's be precautionary. And then he said he felt good the next couple of days.
And that might be it. But play it safe. I mean, just play it safe.
I had no issue with it.
It's not a big deal. There are people who are saying, "Oh, you need the kind of money he's making. He needs to pitch through that kind of stuff." No, he doesn't. No.
Would you rather have Jacob deGrom if this team stays the way they are at the end of the year when you need him to make that playoff push, or if you get in the playoffs to make a run? Do you want Jacob deGrom there or not?
Yeah.
Why lose him for the year over something stupid because he changes the delivery because his wrist was wrong and tears a knee on a?
And why lose him for 2 weeks? I mean, you look at the Rangers. They have the A's and the Reds. Should not great teams. You never know with baseball. Not great teams.
A's seem to have the Rangers number no matter what they're.
But then it's the Yankees, Diamondbacks are in first place, and then it's a West Coast road trip to the Mariners, the Angels. And the A's,
exactly.
It's their first 10-game or long 3-city road trip. It's official start of the grind, and you don't want to lose a guy like that. During that, because it's a domino effect. All right, so example given, Jacob deGrom has to go on the IL for 2 weeks, and then he'll miss another 5 days. All right, so he's out 20 days. All right, so that means Dane Dunning's going to pitch 3 times. All right, great. Who's going to take Dane Dunning's spot in the bullpen? You have a bunch of guys down there, but you're still going to be sensitive to the inning shortfall.
Right.
So who do you do? What do you want to do? Do you want to bring up a guy who may not be ready, a guy who's not on the 40-man roster? Do you want to bring up Cody Bradford, who we're going to talk extensively about probably later in the show? But I mean, it's just, and do the roles change? Yeah, and so just if you can keep the status quo, even if it means your guy only goes 4 innings, keep the status quo.
Exactly.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Right.
Exactly.
Let these guys go. Let Mike Maddox, seasoned veteran pitching coach, Bruce Bochy, Hall of Fame manager, Chris Young, general manager, who's a former major league pitcher,
right,
and understands the grind.
Exactly.
Let them make the decisions.
Yep. And look, all of us got nervous when he goes out and there's wrist soreness, but then immediately after the game, I think anybody that covers them knows that Bochy isn't going to BS you, and neither is deGrom. I don't believe so. When they both said, look, it just, it's precautionary more than anything. I think it's fine. I've never felt it before. And then the next day when they said he feels better, he feels fine, and all of that, New York media is going to go nuts on it because they're just waiting for him to go on the IL for 3 weeks or do whatever the hell. That's what they're ready for. But, I have no issue with it. And you're right. Those guys know, and they're going to look, this is what they spent their big money on, his AAV for the year and all of that. This guy is their ace. He's their horse. And there is no reason this early in the season to mess around with the horse. You don't need to push him.
It goes for anybody.
Yeah.
It goes for anybody.
Exactly.
And unfortunately, Corey Seager had to go on the injured list.
Right.
That was
that's a hamstring.
Right. But that wasn't precautionary. Mitch Garver, you're getting mixed signals on whether it's precautionary or not. But it just seems like be cautious early, save your bullets for later.
We played 18 games.
Yeah.
And by the way, if you don't know this, guys, last year the one-run record was horrible for the Rangers. They've only had one one-run game.
Yeah.
They're 1-0.
Yeah.
But they've only had one one-run game.
And that's going to change. I mean,
they're coming up against some good players. Yeah. But I'll tell you right now, one guy that is not doing what he did last year is Marcus Semien, who has started this year. He picked up where Corey got hurt, and he has carried this team, especially now. Again, you're playing the Royals, but against the Astros, he had a good series. Yeah. And I'll tell you another guy who, we all expected that he was going to be a good player, but it was okay if he was working through it, and that was going to be Josh Young.
Yeah.
There's going to be a book on Josh Young. These guys are going to scout him, and they're going to be a book on him when he eventually. But Josh Young has looked comfortable at the plate and looked like everything advertised.
Yeah, and he's been very good at third.
Yes.
That's something that Bruce Bochy stressed to him in spring training. Your offense isn't always going to be there, but your defense needs to be there. And that's important when you have pitchers who are always in the strike zone and throwing strikes. Balls are going to be put in play more. I know these guys strike out a lot of guys, but that's important. But, yeah, I mean, he hit the 3-run homer Monday night at Kansas City. He hasn't had his it was important for him to come up last year. He hasn't had his deer in the headlights look or feel. I think coming up last year showed him what he needed to do. He wasn't happy. The power was there, but he wasn't happy with it. And so he made adjustments. He got back to what he wanted to do. He worked on a swing, all these things that he can do in the offseason, and it looks like it's paying off. And, Nate Lowe has been pretty good. He had that long hitting streak. Travis Jankowski,
I was about to say.
You're getting it from unexpected sources that, that's probably not the track record shows that ain't going to last. Leody Taveras had 3 hits Wednesday. So even, Bubba Thompson had that nice game at Wrigley Field. So there are guys who are contributing throughout the lineup. And when you're deep in your lineup, there's no easy outs. You're going to score runs and win games. And that's happening.
And go beyond that. So if you're deep and there's going to not be easy outs, but more importantly right now with when you have one of your best bats out, you've got to make up for it on the defensive side of the ball. And their outfield they've been throwing out there is one of the more talented and athletic outfields ever when they've been going with Taveras, Jankowski, or Bubba, and then they have Garcia and Wright. But, man, that's an athletic and good outfield.
Yeah. Yeah. Is anybody worried about Adolis Garcia's defense?
I was going to say
it hasn't been great.
Hasn't been like it was.
Yeah,
no,
there's
it's
some
not.
balls that he should have. I can think of.
It's getting back to stuff.
I can think of 3 or 4.
That kind of reminds you of and I hate to say this, I know, but it's kind of the Nelly Cruz going out over for that ball. But you've seen him do it a couple times. He's go back on the ball, looks like he's getting to it, doesn't know whether to jump or what to do, and one of them, he should have had a couple of them, it looked like.
Right, but I don't know. I mean, if he's been moving between center and right field, you kind of maybe give him the benefit of the doubt. But
he's also athletic enough and young that he's not 35-year-old Nelly Cruz. He's 30-year-old, 31-year-old.
Well, he's been productive in the middle of the lineup.
Yep.
Not hitting for great average, but he's driving in a lot of runs. So, and again, Corey Seager's not part of this right now.
Right.
And again, the schedule's going to get tougher.
Yep.
So, but feel great about what's happening.
Yeah, exactly. And
feel great about it.
And I think everyone thought Josh Smith would come up and just fill in and be the shortstop, but Duran's been getting some ABs there.
Yeah.
Duran hits the ball harder than Josh Smith does.
He does.
Just flat out.
Yeah.
Josh Smith's a great player. The difference between the two, in my opinion, I think Josh Smith is a big league player that's going to play in the big league as a super utility guy. Duran might be a guy that ends up at a position in the big leagues.
Good, yeah.
Standing. He just hits the ball hard enough that he might end up – here he's blocked unless he turns into a left fielder or whatever. But the Rangers sure have some outfielders we're going to talk about in the minor leagues that might be coming up. I don't know. You guys have no idea who I could possibly be talking about when that happens.
But there are options, that just on the roster itself, there are options that
well, yes.
If somebody is struggling, you can – plug a guy in.
Right.
It looks like they're and the manager's trying to do a good job of getting guys at bats. Even if it's they don't start, but they come in the 7th and get one at bat.
Right.
That helps. That helps. And
right.
Anyway, but I do like the way Bochy is using the bench.
He did have one total mess up though when he brought in Bubba Thompson to pinch run the other night, and then he gets promptly picked off at first base. That's going to happen.
That's not on the manager. Yeah, that's not on the manager. Yeah,
I'm going to blame Bochy because every once in a while I just think you have to hold the manager accountable.
Well, okay.
So it's Bochy's fault that he got caught off base over there.
Yeah. Because
every once in a while I just got to bitch about Bochy for something. I don't know. I just got to figure it out.
No, but it's kind of weird though that we we're not. The last 2 years we've been talking about. Well, this guy could come up from the minor leagues and plug in for this guy, and this guy. Well, we just got to be patient with them and all this stuff. There's none of that right now, and it's kind of refreshing. It's going to make this segment shorter. It's like or we're going to get like super nitpicky.
Like my Bochy opinion.
Yeah, like, oh, well, Nate Eovaldi, he hasn't been that good. His start the other night, Tuesday night, when the Royals came out and opened triple, ground out double, and we're hitting the ball hard, and he was struggling, but
he adjusted.
That's a veteran pitcher.
Yeah. He
adjusted. He found a way to make something work. He stuck with a pitch until it started working again. And the next thing you know, he gets him through 6. And then they shoot off there and give him a big lead. And I mean that was just a professional start. That's something that example given last year, Taylor Hearn wasn't capable of doing.
Nope.
Or even at times Dunning and Glenn Otto. That's just the difference.
Yep. My stuff isn't working. I'll figure out what is working until
and you can be like, oh, well, this guy's got such a better arm. This not than Eovaldi, but it just has why isn't this guy in the rotation over this guy? Well, because this guy's done it for 7 years and he can see this isn't working and he can see it quick and he can make a quick adjustment. And nobody has to tell him.
Nope.
No.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, look, so anything else? And let's get our guest on here.
Yeah, let's go ahead and get Josh on. I got a feeling this one's going to be a little lengthier. He's a funny guy, but a lot we don't know about him. A lot you people don't know about him. And
the reason we're doing it, Cincinnati Reds. He's a huge Cincinnati Red guy. They're going to Cincinnati Monday. In fact, the day this is dropping might be the first day of the Cincinnati Red things. We've met him. He's hysterical.
He's a funny guy, but huge baseball guy,
big nerd, big baseball nerd. All of that.
So it's going to be fun. I've been looking forward to this for a while.
Right after this, the Frisco Rough Riders are going to bring us Josh Sneed. Guys, we'll be back right just a second.
The Frisco Rough Riders are finishing up a homestand as we speak, but they are about to go on a 2-week road trip through Amarillo, which is always a hitter's paradise, and then over to Midland. So if you guys are on the road and want to go check out the Rough Riders on the road, hit one of those 2 ballparks. They return home May 9th to face Wichita. On May 10th, it's Education Day. May 11th, the always popular Thirsty Thursday, which I've enjoyed before. May 12th, fireworks. Gotta love the fireworks. May 13th, kids run the bases. And then Sunday, May 14th, which I believe is Mother's Day, is Kids Sunday Fun Day. Maybe it should be Mom Sunday Fun Day. But also a favorite, Bark in the Park. So that'll be a 2-week homestand that'll continue the 16th. But get out. See Frisco. Go to www.milb.com/Frisco to get your tickets, get your schedule, get your information on the Frisco Rough Riders.
All right, guys, and joining us right now on the Frisco Rough Rider hotline, Frisco Rough Riders AA affiliate to the Texas Rangers, it's stand-up comedian and Cincinnati Red guru, Josh Sneed. Josh, what's going on, buddy?
Good morning, fellas. How are you?
We're doing well. Nice day here. Rangers are in first place right now.
I saw that.
How are the Reds?
They're pretty fired up.
Let's talk about the Rangers. The Reds are fine. They're better than people thought they would be. They're in last place where people thought they would be, but I don't know. It's like asking, how was your food at 4 a.m. at the Waffle House? What do you want me to say about it? You're going to go on Yelp and give it a 5-star? It's not going to happen.
No, the Rangers haven't played the Rays yet, and the Reds actually handed the Rays one of their 3 losses on the season. So
they did, and then they lost the next 2 games by 16-0 combined score. 8-0, and then 8-0.
Well, then in Pittsburgh now, I think. I mean, it's Friday. Played Pittsburgh last night, so this is a battle for 4th place.
Well, Pittsburgh's up in front.
Pittsburgh's in second place.
They're not going to stay there.
They're not going to stay there. But, the reason we decided to have Josh on this week is because Monday night, which hopefully this will get out before Monday night, the Rangers are coming to Cincinnati. Are you going to any of those?
I'm going to try to go Tuesday.
Okay.
The youth sports dominate all of my calendars in the evening between my son and my daughter. So we get to games whenever we can. We were there last week for the drubbing of the Phillies, where Josh Harrison actually had to come in and pitch for the Phillies in the late part of the game, and I think we won 15-1.
Yeah. No, he pitched against the Rangers in that series.
When he hitting mid-90s or something?
No, he was just lobbing it in.
Oh yeah, it was like more like low 40s.
The Royals had a guy who came in and was throwing in the.
Yeah, he was that outfielder that came in throwing mid-90s.
So yeah, no, I'm with you on the youth sports. That's all we do. It's all we do. We got a daughter who was in kind of a select soccer team. She also plays softball right now, so that's fun. And then the son is playing basketball and is on a select baseball team. So every night of the week, Tuesday's the only night.
Yeah, that seems to be our only night
Tuesday.
too.
The gods gave us Tuesday.
How old is your kid? How old are your kids, Josh?
My daughter's 6, and she's just coming out of playing basketball. And I put all the stuff she does in quotes, not because she's a girl, but at 6 years old,
right?
It's watching them run up and down a field or a court at this point.
Right.
She's starting soccer, which I will say, for a 6-year-old, she is, and I don't know where it comes from. She put on a goalie jersey last year, and just every team we played was just like, who is that goalie? But she just has this tenacity. I have never seen it. I don't know if it's from having an older brother and it's all been pent up and it's finally coming loose, but she will go out and dive on balls and dive for balls. And no one taught her any of this. It's been wild, but my son's on a select baseball team, and it's weird. Like, I hate to say this, but it kind of ties into just talking to you guys about the Reds and stuff, is that last year was his first year playing that kind of baseball, and it really rejuvenated my love for the game of baseball, because it's been such lean years for the Reds, that watching kids play just, at not a high level, but a higher level than the leagues he had been in, but watching the strategy come back into play, the fundamentals and the joy of winning and, playing for the fun of it. Like, a lot of the other dads said the same thing. Like, man, this did a lot for me in terms of just like enjoying watching baseball. Like, that's how bad it's been here locally, for a while.
That's cool. But yeah, we love the tournaments. We wish we've been getting 8 a.m. games though. That's the worst.
Oh boy, no.
Yeah, no, not at all. But yeah, no, we love it. We love the kids get all, they make a great play. They get excited. That's the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
But
I was the head coach back then. My kids are grown. I mean, my oldest is 26. My youngest is a sophomore. He doesn't play sports anymore, but I was the head coach, head of the league, all of that stuff. And I'm going to tell you, that's an ass whipping. Yeah. And that is where look, in where the town we live is Richardson, Texas. Richardson, Texas has 4 high schools. It's just north of Dallas. Has 4 high schools, tons of elementary schools. They said, John, you're going to run the league. You need to put all the teams together. So try to keep kids from each elementary school together because they can. I said, great, that sounds great. So I start putting it together on one side of town. Every elementary school had 12 to 17 kids playing. And then on my side of town, down here with the unverified Twitter people over on this side.
That's all of us today.
Yeah. I had 3 kids from my son's elementary. I was like basically on corners saying, I'll pay for your entry fee. Will you play baseball or T-ball? And so these kids whipped our, what's. Yeah. I coached my boys up until probably about 3 or 4 years ago. My record in every sport I ever coached was horrendous.
Something to be very proud of.
Oh, yeah. I coached a football team for 5 years, and we won 1 game.
Good Lord, John.
Well, John, you heard me tell the story about when I got roped into coaching during COVID, because that's the thing is, like, with my schedule, I never really had the time to commit to making sure I was going to be there for all the practices and the games. And while I enjoyed it, I just couldn't do it. And so I signed up to coach him during COVID when all the comedy clubs were shut down. And I don't know if there was a draft and I was not invited to it, or if they gave me every kid that just checked no on the box where it says, do you know what a baseball is? Like, I don't know, but we were terrible. And I remember, that's kind of how my son ended up in select baseball, is because the difference between skill level of like the better teams and the lower tier teams in the not whole ball, was ridiculous. I remember the first game, the other team showed up and they were wearing amazing uniforms, not the ones provided free by the league like ours were. And they're hanging a sign on the fence with all the sponsors of their team. They have warm-up music, they have walk-up music. And I sat my kids down and I said, listen, I just want you all to know that today you're going to get murdered. And I just felt like we should take a minute as a team to prepare our brains for the beating that is about to be handed to us. Because I promise, good or bad, you're going to remember today for the rest of your life. And it was an bloodbath. I mean, I'm like, why are we playing this team? He's like yelling at kids because they're not turning double plays correctly. I'm like, if I could get that one to quit playing in the dirt for 5 minutes, I'd call it a W. And I would have.
Yeah. No. That's pretty good. That's right. I mean, because there are the kids that they just don't want to be there.
No, it was the same bit every time. He would just put his hat on the ground, fill it with dirt, and then put it on his head, and then all the dirt would fall down. And it's like, that was funny in the first practice, dude, but you got to write some new stuff.
So, Josh, let me tell the story about Josh. For those that don't know Josh as a stand-up comedian, I mean, he is one of the funniest. I've been a big fan of Josh's for 3 or 4 years. And the gods aligned it to when we were in Arizona. I remember I told you that night, I was like, hey, man, this guy I really like. Where is Glendale? I didn't know where Glendale was. I was in Surprise, and I said, where is Glendale, Arizona? He goes, man, it's like 15 minutes down the road. And I said, well, I'm going to watch this guy. I've been following him for a few years. He's hysterical, and I'm a big stand-up comedian guy. So we hooked up there. It was really funny. I overheard him say to a guy, there's like a comedy club. You go to a comedy club, they used to do 2 shows on the weekend, Friday and Saturday nights. Yeah. I was going to the later show because you and I were working up until then doing stuff and getting stuff ready. I get there and I overhear him say, yeah, tomorrow I'm going to Surprise to see the Reds play the Rangers. And I went, there's my in. Kind of slid over and I went, I was like, dude, I'm in the media with the Rangers. So we ended up talking a little bit. He did his show. It was hysterical. I showed you his show while I was gone.
Right.
He had his son with him, Josh.
Yeah, I would have gone. So my son was 10.
He had his son. He could go. And so then the next day we found each other at the game. We just sat there around that table laughing and talking. And you're like, man, I'll come on. And I'm like, that's great. He's one of my favorite comedians, and he's hysterical, and he loves baseball.
I do love baseball.
That's a winner.
That's a winner of it all right there. Dude, how did you get into this? What started it? I've got a buddy that was in comedian years ago, but what prompts you to go, I just need to do this?
For me, I wanted to be on Saturday Night Live. Like I watched a little bit of stand-up growing up, but it was mainly just like some of the bigger names that were on TV. I wasn't like a junkie for stand-up, but Saturday Night Live really shaped my humor as a youth, and I always wanted to be on that show. And then I got to the point where I was done with college. I didn't say graduated. I was done with college, and I was in the IT world, working at Procter & Gamble here in Cincinnati. And I was like, this is something I've always wanted to do, and I have no idea where I would begin, especially living in Cincinnati. So I thought, let me see if I can just make people who aren't my friends and family laugh. Maybe I'll just try an open mic night or something. And I was having this conversation with a guy who was a friend of mine that he ran a sports bar near my house. I would go there every night and watch baseball after I got, done with work. And I'm just having this conversation with this guy, and out of nowhere, he basically says, look, I have a doctorate in theater. He was like, I moved to Cincinnati during the boom of stand-up comedy in the 80s, and I taught a class at the university on stand-up comedy. And when the industry died down, I had to find other work to support my family. So that's how I ended up managing a restaurant. He goes, that was my life. And he goes, if you're serious about wanting to try stand-up, I would really enjoy helping you figure out how to get on stage and, write material. And I was like, it was just very serendipitous,
Mm-hmm. Sure.
And so he helped me. I brought him material. He gave me some books he thought I should read. He gave me a microphone to take home and plug into a tiny amp so I could hear what my voice sounded like in a microphone. Like I was 20 years old.
Okay.
And at that time, that was very young to try an open mic night. Now there's like kids in high school doing it.
Yeah.
But at that time, this is 1998. I was the youngest person at open mic nights by probably 10 years. And I had this guy helping me. And so I kind of stood out, for as young as I was. And I came, I guess, across a little bit polished because I had somebody helping me. I wasn't just trying to figure it out on my own. And it just kind of took off for me right away. And instantly, what was going to be a stepping stone to hopefully getting into improv and sketch comedy, I fell in love with stand-up. I mean, I was a sponge. I was there every second I could when I wasn't working, just watching pros and like trying to learn the craft. And, obviously single, no kids at the time. And I fell in love with stand-up, and it just sort of took off from there. And then, fast forward after that, 3.5 years later, I quit my day job to do stand-up full time. And then in July, that'll have been 22 years.
Wow. That's pretty awesome.
That's great. And you're touring all over. Where our goal is, we're going to get Josh to Texas. You used to come to Texas, right?
Yeah, I haven't been in a couple years, but I was a fairly regular in Dallas and Fort Worth both. So I don't think it's a stretch to say I'll be back there fairly soon. I take summers off. I've been very blessed with a couple side hustles that I started that have taken off. I have an apparel company that I started with a buddy of mine in 2005 that has blossomed into this really cool, group of website brands that we run. One of them, the biggest one, is a local brand called Cincy Shirts that we actually have 2 brick and mortar stores here in Cincinnati.
Oh, wow. I was just looking at the website. Yeah.
And then we have, we have an MLB Players Association license that we got a couple years ago. So we have another brand called In the Clutch. So that's my shameless plug to Rangers fans. Check out In the Clutch.
Absolutely. Check it out.
Yeah, do it. Go check it out.
And you'll see Rangers t-shirts on there that we created. And we have another one called Old School Shirts that's all vintage stuff. Anyway, it's all grown to a point where it's let me be very selective with how much stand-up I do. I don't have to be on the road all of the time. And that in return has kept stand-up fun for me because it's not something that I'm doing because I have to do. So I'm kind of more selective of the gigs that I take, and I do take summers off when the kids are out of school so I can be home and do dad stuff and watch sports. But starting in the fall, I'll kick back up again. March, when you guys saw me, I was very busy. I was in Sarasota one week, Phoenix the next, and I did a week in Vegas. And then we just got back from 10 days in London for spring break. So I'm home now for a while, which is
great. I was following on Twitter. I saw the pic. Were you doing shows in London, or you just there having fun?
I was just there having fun. We're big Star Wars fans, if you can't tell by everything behind me. My dad was a model maker for Kenner Toys, so Star Wars was kind of part of my DNA because he made Star Wars toys.
That's awesome.
And so it's been passed on to my children, and my wife and her family are big fans. So they announced this. They have like a yearly event called Star Wars Celebration, and we're big nerds. We go to that, and they announced that this year was going to be in London. And it was the same week as spring break. So we decided let's make a whole family trip out of it. We did like 4 or 5 days of seeing all the sites in London, and then ended the week with a few days at this big Star Wars event. It was incredible. A trip of a lifetime.
Yeah. I didn't know until I was looking at your Cincy Shirt site that Aaron Pryor, the great boxer, was from Cincinnati.
Yeah.
And he and Alexis Arguello, this is kind of dating myself here. My 8th birthday party in 82 was the night of their first fight, and it was on HBO. And I had pink eye, but we still had a party.
Yeah.
But my best friend, to this day, his mom was a little leery of the pink eye. So my best friend went and sat with my dad in the completely other room and watched that fight. And he said it's one of his favorite nights. He still remembers it. But anyway, he's like, yeah, I remember that fight. He remembers what happened. So anyway, that's pretty funny. And I'm thinking about getting him that shirt. Now he's huge. He's 6'10" and weighs about 300. So if you have a 4X,
we got big boy sizes.
Okay, I'm gonna check it out.
One of the things, Josh, that we got. You are a huge baseball fan. You coach Little League. You're a big. You actually didn't you say you have some stuff with the Reds? You do.
So yeah, I mean, this is. I'm such a fan. Like my whole life. Like my dad, God rest his soul, Bengals and Reds, and then Star Wars. Those were like our three like biggest bonds. And we weren't poor, but we didn't have a ton of money. We would get to maybe 2 or 3 Reds games a year. I would get tickets for getting decent grades one time, and then he would organize some kind of like trip for our whole church to go to a game together. And then we might just randomly find ourselves at a game. But those memories have really like helped through these lean years of the Reds, because I have a son now, and I got, for so long I was so invested, like how good is the team? Like I would live and die by each win. Like I'm the guy who's watching, they're losing 7-0 playing the Dodgers on the West Coast. It's 2 a.m. here local, right, and I'm still watching the game. Like that's just the kind of fan.
Wait for the beginning.
Yeah. Knowing we're going to get out of this somehow. And then as I've started to take my son and my daughter to games, I've noticed that they don't care who wins. They enjoy the experience of being there. And as I think back to like my childhood, when I can look at the record and know how bad the Reds were, I couldn't tell you any game I went to if the Reds won or lost that game. I just remember enjoying being there. And I've tried to like really embrace that now with my kids, and it's helped with these years that we've been experiencing as Reds fans to be like, you know what, my life is not affected by this at all. And so, because of that, I've always I've always been a baseball card collector. I've always paid attention to what other teams are doing. If you can see this little thing up here, this is a box that I started a few years ago, and it's actually outgrown that, but I try to see a baseball game if there's one being played, whatever city I'm in, no matter who's playing. Just because I enjoy, there's nothing for me like being at the ballpark in the summer. And I know you guys have to do it for work, and it probably, loses some of its luster. But man, just if you give me an afternoon free, I don't care who's playing, I want to be outside watching baseball.
That's awesome. I'm different than Jeff. Jeff is a full-time. He's actually a full-time journalist and covered this team since 2004. 2008 as a play-by-play. I'm a Texas Ranger fan. I grew up like you did, and we teamed up. So our perspective is neat. I come from a diehard homer. I am no doubt that I want the Rangers to win every game. Yeah. He is more objective, and so
I root for the team that scores first.
Yes. And so when
take that back. I root for the home team because I don't want to play the bottom of the ninth. All right,
that's hilarious.
Now it helps business. It helps business that the Rangers win.
Yep.
It really does. It helps subscribers. It helps our YouTube channel. And back in the day when I worked for a newspaper, it helped with web clicks, which is how you're judged these days. So, and players are a lot better to deal with.
Sure.
When they're on a 4-game winning streak instead of a fucking 7-game losing streak. Pardon my language. And so that's kind of, I do want them to do well. And then you get to know the guys.
Yeah.
And you're like, hey, he's in a slump. He needs to get out. I want to see him have a good game.
Yeah.
But I've been to all 30 ballparks. I've been to 6 or 7 or 8 that no longer exists, all because of my job. It's a blessing. I mean, even going to Detroit and Cleveland, I've enjoyed it.
Yeah.
It's really cool. In Baltimore, beautiful ballpark. Not a big fan
of a great city
off of Brad Street, but you got to watch out. But so that's kind of where I take the joy in it when you're like in the middle of a 10-game road trip and you wish you were at home. You're like, no, this is a pretty sweet gig.
Yeah, and for me, I got lucky enough to get credentialed a few years back. Then Jeff and I partnered up, stayed there. So, but when the Rangers lose 3, I don't have to ask the tough question about why you suck. They do that.
Well, so the T-shirt company. So when we started it, we were paying someone to print shirts for us. And then at some point we were like, if we're going to make any money, we got to buy some equipment and print them for ourselves.
Yeah.
And so I had met this guy who had this warehouse that was sitting empty somewhere. And he gave us a really sweet deal on the space when we decided to purchase equipment and make the shirts for ourselves. And I kind of, through that, I developed a relationship with this gentleman, and he's a very well respected financial advisor for Baird, but he does a ton of stuff in the community. He sits on a lot of charity boards, and one of the things is he's president of the Reds Community Fund. And so Bronson Arroyo, former Reds pitcher, is also a musician, and he was going to do a concert to benefit the Reds Community Fund, and they wanted me to do stand-up to open for him. And that was sort of my introduction to the Reds as an organization, as someone who wasn't just a fan.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And so it came time. We were getting closer to doing the show. And I don't know if you guys ever met Marty Brenneman or have any interaction with Marty Brenneman, but he's a very, very good friend of mine. And I know he's a very polarizing person in and outside of the city. For people who have an opinion on him, but
yes,
he was always known for saying what he thought during broadcasts. And Bronson was going through a bit of a slump, and Marty said maybe if he wasn't out playing music, he'd be pitching better. And so when that sort of, Marty he was always the voice of the fan, and if he had an opinion like that, it wasn't very long before that became public opinion. Mm-hmm. And so the Reds thought it might be a bad look if they put on this concert and and he's not pitching great, and after what Marty said. So they canceled the concert, and then kind of felt bad for me that I was like looking forward to doing this event as like a comedian at an official Reds event. So they asked me if I would perform at Reds Fest, which is the big, I'm sure the Rangers have something similar, so here it's in December and everybody's all, jacked up waiting for opening day to get there. And so they had me do a couple different things at Reds Fest, one of which they had just hired Dusty Baker to be the manager. And so I recorded a song that was a parody of Dust in the Wind called Dusty Please Win. And Nick Lachey from the 98 Degrees singer is a buddy of mine. And I had bounced some of the lyrics off of him, and he said, why don't I record it with you? So he recorded this song with me. And then they asked me to sing it at Reds Fest. And then after that, it sort of started to snowball that the Reds would ask me to do more and more things. And they have a charity golf outing every year. That's this like big 2-day event at a casino where people go and spend the night, and they have this huge gala and dinner. And so they started having me do comedy at these shows. And then again, more and more, the Reds would kind of bring me in, and at each event I'd meet a broadcaster or some of the players or former players, like childhood heroes of mine that are now like, friends of mine, like George Foster and Ron Oster and, guys like this that are just like, I've been so I know I get all over the place when I start these tangents, but a friend of mine actually made Saturday Night Live. He got on the cast for a few years, Finesse Mitchell. And so I got to go several times to SNL while he was there. And I still to this day tell people, like, I have an easier time talking to an A-list celebrity than I do like an obscure Reds player from the 80s that I collected their baseball cards. Like, still to this day, I can't be normal around some of these guys. Like, I don't know what it is.
So
No. I was just going to say, and that eventually led to me doing a gig for the Reds in Bally Sports during the pandemic, where they were doing this sort of like online show that took place during Reds games. It was like a trivia app that Bally's came out with, and people would watch our show, answer questions while the game was going on, and we would talk about the game and things that were happening in it. So again, I've just been very blessed with the way my career's evolved, that as much as I am still a fan and always have been a fan, that I've developed these relationships with current broadcasters and players and things of that nature.
Yeah. So you're not Big Red Machine Reds. I mean, you weren't.
He's too young.
I was born right after that. I was born in '77.
What's your first baseball
Sabo. Chris Sabo had to be.
No, come on. That's like 1990. Like that's way later.
Your first favorite player, right?
My first favorite player. I'll tell you two. So I'll tell you my Reds and non-Reds. My first favorite Reds player. This is going to be dumb, but it was John Franco, and it was because I was big into baseball cards, and I throw left-handed and I bat right-handed. And it was such a weird combination that whenever I would get baseball cards, I'd always flip over and look on the back and see who threw left and batted right. And it was Ricky Henderson, John Franco, and Tommy John. And two of those people never batted because they were pitchers.
Yeah.
and so those were like John Franco, because he was a Red and because he threw left-handed and bat right-handed, was my favorite Reds player until I started to really understand baseball. And then it was, you could see the progression from like Pete Rose to, like the Eric Davis, Barry Larkin years on into like Sean Casey. And then non-Reds, Will Clark was my favorite player as a kid. I just was obsessed with his swing. And then I saw Ken Griffey Jr. play in high school here in Cincinnati. They played my field where my high school team played, and I was in junior high. He was in high school, and I watched him play, and I was like, this dude is next level. And so as soon as he became a Mariner, he became my favorite player, and then stayed my favorite player until Joey Votto came into the league, and he to this day is my favorite player.
I grew up in Denver, and the Denver Bears / Zephyrs were at one point the Reds AAA team for a few years. But I remember Eric Davis came through town.
I liked Eric Davis.
I loved his stance.
Yeah, that weird stand-up straight guy.
But he came to a card show. I was looking for this the last couple of days. I think it's in my mom's house. And I got like a big poster of his signed. I got a couple things. He was probably one of my top 5 favorite players at the time. I loved Eric Davis, and then that '90 Reds team.
Yeah,
that's the team. That's the team, I guess, of your lifetime.
Yeah,
if you're a Reds fan.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of winning, and of course, and it's fun. Like over the years, like I do Reds fantasy camp every year now, where you go be a baseball player for a week, and the coaches are all former Reds players, and the Reds have one of the biggest fantasy camps. We have 12 teams with 12 people per team, so there's 144 campers, 24 coaches, and so like, rest in peace, Tom Browning has become a good friend of mine, Dimitri Young, Tom Hume, Danny Graves, who's a Texas guy now, lives down there in San Antonio. Like, just like to be friends with these guys, it's still like kind of surreal for me. And, Marty Brenneman's another one that I've become very good friends with. I actually got to help on the production side of his documentary a couple years ago. And, it's fun to know these guys on a personal level, but there's still that like inside, like when I see him, I'm just like, I don't know. I think it's like kind of the way Star Wars is. Like, it just, if I see a Kenner Star Wars figure, like, I don't go, oh, that's fun, I remember that. It's like there's like a memory that instantly gets triggered to like where I was when I first saw it. And so when when I see some of these guys, I remember like being at the ballpark, and it's like, oh my God, I can't believe there goes, Dan Billardello. You know what I mean? Like these random Reds players. And that's another fun game my buddies and I have is we try to work in obscure 80s baseball players into conversation. Like you can't just say, how about this name? You have to pretend like you had some sort of interaction or that they were in the news, and you just drop it in there. And it's so fun because the more obscure name, the better, right?
I got the one for you. You're going to kill them with this one. Jeff Kunkel.
Jeff Kunkel's a great one.
Yeah.
That's a great one. That's fantastic.
Every time someone talks about like a hot new shortstop coming up through the Rangers or something, I'm like, oh man, you got to think you had Michael Young, you got Alex Rodriguez, and then there was always Jeff Kunkel. You get that big question mark goes over their head. He was the most, he was like this huge number 2 overall pick, all of that, and he couldn't. His first game, I remember this, his first game in the big leagues, he hit like 2 home runs and then just kind of floated off into oblivion and never hit above 100 or whatever it was.
Yeah.
Or something like
That's
that.
pretty good stuff.
My buddy still has the best one. He said, he's like, you'll never guess who I ran into at the store the other day. And I said, who? And he said, Buddy Bianca Lana. I was like, oh God, that's a great one. I don't think that one.
Buddy's a regular. You'll see Buddy a lot at the winter meetings. He wrote a book. He's like a mental skills coach now, I think. But you'll run into Buddy. He's everywhere at the winter meetings.
That's awesome.
It's a great game.
Hey, so when I want to get a little bit into the comedy before we get you out of here. We've kept you a little bit. Tell me, like, what are some of the best heckles or what? I mean, is there a place you love to play? I know you do a lot of stuff in Cincinnati. I saw you're going to do a show and donate all the proceeds to a Little League, which I think is just fantastic to do that. But, when did you know you made it? Where were you at when you were like, all right, you know what? I've done it. This is it. Your first big payday or whatever. Tell us a little bit about that.
It's funny. I can think of like benchmark moments that I think they weren't necessarily I've made it, but they were, when you're doing open mic nights and it's just a hobby and it's just something that you're doing for fun and you enjoy, that you start to go down that road of like when you buy a lottery ticket and then all of a sudden you're dreaming about all the ways you're going to spend the money, and you just sit around and be like, wouldn't it be cool? And I had like things on that list that are still to this day being checked off. I would say the 3 sort of signature ones were when I worked at Procter & Gamble, the headquarters of P&G downtown are right across the street from the Taft Theater, where a lot of the big comedians that come to town play. And so there would be many times where I'd sit there on my lunch break and I'd look out and I'd see the marquee of the Taft and I'd look at who was coming and I'd think like, how cool would it be to do stand up at the Taft one day? And then my first manager that I got when I lived in Los Angeles was the producer of the Blue Collar Comedy Tour. Yeah. And so he had me out on the road as an opener for Ron White, Larry the Cable Guy, and Bill Engvall. And so he told me that when Larry the Cable Guy was playing Cincinnati next, that I would get to open for him, which was at the Taft Theater. So that was for sure one of them, was like stepping out on the stage at the Taft and then kind of looking at it from across the street of like, well, there's the place I used to work,
Yeah, sure. That's cool.
So that was one of them. The second one was Comedy Central. When they were doing half-hour specials, they would let the comedian choose their background, like what they wanted the set to look like. And so me and my open mic buddies would always sit around and go, well, if you got a Comedy Central special, what would it look like? And so I always had this vision of being in detention. So like it would be like a classroom with a chalkboard and a bunch of empty desks.
I've seen this.
And then a teacher sitting at like a mannequin or whatever, sitting at the desk. And I'm like, I could be at the chalkboard, like when it starts, like writing sentences, like I will tell jokes in class. And then it starts and I turn around and I come down to the mic. And so when I found out that I got a half-hour special, when I found out I got a half-hour special, like they had all these meetings set up and one of them was like, okay, today we're going to talk about, like, have you given any thought to what your set would look like? And I go, I know exactly what I want it to look like. And I told them this whole thing and they sent me drawings of what it would look like. And I'm like, that's it. And then walking into the theater in New York and seeing my set built out, like that's another one that I got goosebumps even just talking about, like the feeling of like, oh my gosh, like this is something I literally dreamed about. And then the third one would be 2 years ago. My first time headlining at the MGM Grand in Las Vegas.
Oh, wow.
And being on the strip and looking up and seeing my face on the marquee of one of the biggest hotels in Las Vegas on the sign that I was performing at the club that week was, I mean, that just happened last month and it has not gotten old. Like, it's just one of those things that you dream about and it happened.
What, do you have a comedic influence? Was there a guy growing up that you were like, or a movie that triggered you?
It's so creepy to say, but Bill Cosby was the biggest influence as far as comedians go. my parents were strict Southern Baptists, so that we weren't watching, R-rated anything. So Bill Cosby was one of the few comedians that I saw as a kid, and his special himself was. It set the tone for what, if I ever did this, what I would want to be is like a storyteller, somebody that just felt like they were talking.
Yeah.
And so he was an influence before I even dreamed of getting on stage. And then Jake Johansson, Wendy Liebman, Seinfeld, Stephen Wright was another huge one for me before I ever.
He was great.
Yeah. And then after I started, Mitch Hedberg was the biggest influence, hands down. He was a good friend of mine. He helped me out a ton. Like, I just can't say enough amazing things about him. Brian Regan's another one.
Yeah.
Because I've always been a pretty clean comic. And he just kind of set the path of like, look, you can do this without having to be dirty. Like, he just kind of made the blueprint. Dave Attell, Bill Burr, Chappelle. There's so many, and then right now, to me, no one is funnier than Nate Bargatze right now.
Nate?
I do, and he's always been super nice to me, and just as a person, we share a lot of interests. He's a huge baseball fan, and as a fan of the craft, I just don't think anybody's doing it better than him right now.
That's great.
I love Nate, and I saw Nate when he came to town. And look, here's my deal, and let me be very clear. You can say the F word, every other word, and still be funny to me if your stuff's good. I'm not biased that I really like clean comics better than. I just want you to have good stuff. You tell me. Dave Chappelle, one of my favorites, but I really do appreciate the guys that can do it without the F word, every other word, because I think that craft is, to me, it's really more impressive. And doing that, your dry bar comedy, tell me a little bit about that. That's the big one right now. I mean, you've gotten millions and millions and millions of hits on that thing. That's the one you watched that I showed you. Yeah. How did that thing come together?
Oh my gosh, it's crazy to even think about where that's gone. And I'll say this about clean comedy. Like, I will curse from time to time, but it's pretty rare. And it's kind of, if I'm just relaxed and the environment kind of feels like it's not people who showed up expecting to hear something squeaky clean. Right. But for the most part, I write clean. And the reason that is that guy that I told you about who helped me start, he told me something that I tell other comics that are starting out to this day, and it stuck with me to this day. He says, treat profanity like a spice. He said, it will make a steak taste really good, but you would never have a plate of oregano for dinner.
That's good.
And I was like, that's always stuck with me, that little anecdote. And I just said, when I was first starting out, the clubs that I worked the most were Cincinnati and Dayton. And the woman in Dayton, who I still refer to as one of my comedy moms, she told me when I started, she said, listen, you're a host of a show. The cleaner that you can be, the more work I can give you, because I'll know I can put you up in front of clean headliners, and I'll know I can put you up in front of dirty headliners. So you can be dirty, but I won't be able to use you as much. And then that morphed into colleges. You can be dirty, you're going to get a lot less college work because most colleges want someone who can show up and be squeaky clean. And then that transformed into corporate gigs where I am now, where it's like, yeah, we can try to find you work at these corporate events, but 99% of them are going to require you to be squeaky clean. So just for the purpose of getting more work, I've always tried to write clean and stay clean. And I also do think there's a bit of a challenge to it of being funny without being hacky and without being dirty. Right.
Right.
And so, the other side of it is on Sirius XM, when you get paid for streaming comedy, there's one channel that requires only squeaky clean material. And I was told once that all the other comedy channels have 55,000 tracks that they can pick from to put on those channels. The tracks that are qualified for the clean comedy is about 1,200 because no one's doing it, right?
Yeah.
And so if you can get clean comedy and a good recording of it, you can get played on that channel all day, and that's a lot of money every month for doing nothing.
Right.
And so when Dry Bar came along, it was basically, I call it Mormon Netflix. That's what it is. It was created by a company called VidAngel.
Yeah.
And that's what they are. They're Mormon Netflix. What they would do is they created this sort of Netflix-esque streaming service, but they would take popular Hollywood TV shows and movies and edit them and remove the cursing, the violence, taking the Lord's name in vain, nudity, whatever. So we always joke that if you watch Game of Thrones on VidAngel, every episode was like 30 seconds. Because they took out all the good stuff. So that company decided they wanted to build the largest library of clean stand-up, but it was only for their subscribers, which were mostly Mormons. They're based out of Provo, Utah. And so I had a couple friends of mine that did a Dry Bar special, and I saw it and I was like, where did you record this? It looks incredible. And they're like, oh, it's this little 150 seat venue in Provo that's recording these specials, of clean comedians for their streaming service. And so I said, what's it pay? And they're like, it's not great, but they give you the tape. And at that point I was really trying to amp up my corporate work, and I hadn't had a good tape made in a while. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to do this only to get the tape so that I can cut it up and use it to try to get more work. And so that was my attitude when I went out there, was just do it and get a good tape and see what that gets you. Well, in the process of that happening, they shifted their business model to, you know what, we're not going to use this to just get people to subscribe to our service. We're going to chop up clips of it and start putting it on Facebook and YouTube and try to get the word out about us that way. And so they partnered with Facebook, who at the time was trying to figure out a way to compete with YouTube. They were losing all their content creators to YouTube. And so to do that, they had to start paying content creators for views and then putting ads in there.
Yeah.
And Dry Bar was one of the partners that they joined up with. Okay. And so it just sort of was a perfect marriage of my special coming out when Facebook was like, we're going to put out anything that you guys create to everybody that we think might want to see it. And so when they started releasing clips of my special, I mean, it was getting more views than I had ever had on anything in my life. My garage sale bit's over 10 million, I think, right now on Facebook, which is insane. I mean, that's like insane.
Yeah.
For something that I went into not really caring about how it did other than for my personal use. You know what I mean? Right. And then since then, it's just snowballed into like this huge, like it's got a huge following. A lot of it had to do with COVID. People were staying home, consuming comedy either more often than they ever had, or maybe even for the first time because, they were at home and the kids were at home and they needed to play stuff that the whole family could hear. So whatever you could say about the stars aligning, it was just perfect timing with my special coming out. And it's just done more for me than anything I've ever done. And I still can't believe I'm saying it.
Your Provo, Utah reference made me think of a couple things.
Fletch?
That was the number one. Number one.
Thank you. It's my favorite comedy. Every time I say it, I immediately think, what am I doing in Provo?
No, this is another thing with my best friend. My kid's doctor's office. It's the rooms are B and then the number. And so whenever we're in B1, baby, B1, and like I parked at a game in the parking garage. It was a sign. The sign level was B1, so I had to take a picture and send it to all my friends because that of all the Fletch things, the weirdest one that sticks out to us is B1.
My best friend and I, we're obsessed. We quote it. I was quoting it last night talking to him, but I want to say it was the Pirates. Somebody had a pitcher whose last name was Hannerhan.
Oh, slap shot.
we all, every time his name came up, like if we were at a game, we would just go Petter ass Hanrahan.
Yeah.
Or anytime you go, what kind of name is Sneed? I always go Comanche Indian. It's just a reflex. I could talk about Fletch on an entire podcast with these guys.
So no, that is the Fletch, probably that Petter ass Hanrahan, but also slap shot. One of the famous scenes is Hanrahan, an opposing player, and Paul Newman is riling him because his wife has come out as gay.
Yeah.
And Hanrahan. But yeah, Hanrahan's a good one.
Oh man.
And then there are a couple shows that my wife watches, and they'll drop in like just randomly like names from Fletch, like. These actors will be acting like they're a FBI agent, let's say, and they'll say, "I'm Agent Poon with the FBI," or Agent Underhill, just something like that. And I catch it and start laughing, and she's like, "Why are you laughing?" But so I finally had to show it to her. She had never seen Fletch. She's 40. She'd never seen Fletch, so we watched it last Thanksgiving. And she just didn't get it. I mean, she laughed some. Of course, I'm dying quoting all the lines, but she wasn't in it. It wasn't there for her. And then the same thing with Animal House, Caddyshack. She just Blazing Saddles. She just doesn't. It just doesn't work for her.
And it's genius.
Yeah.
Listen, we've kept you here a long time, but I'm going to get him out. I want him to tell this story, and it's his fault that he brought this up. He brought up Nick Lachey.
Oh.
And Nick Lachey leads to a hysterical story. And I'm not even going to set it up and say what it is. How does Nick Lachey set this up? You have to tell that story.
So, okay. If you're watching this and you're thinking like, hey, what kind of person is this comedian? Is it someone that I should look into? I want you to ignore this story when you make your decision. But I've always talked about on stage that there are certain things that you should do just for the story, right? If you have the opportunity to walk away with having a good story to tell, you do it. So many years ago, I farted on Jessica Simpson. There's a story behind this. I don't want people to think I just go around crop dusting celebrities. Like this, something led up to this. So, and I know, look, I get where I'm talking to people right now. I get that she's the hometown girl, right? She's down there.
Yeah.
So, I was living in Los Angeles, as I mentioned, and I was flying home to Cincinnati for Thanksgiving, and it was a red-eye flight. Left LA about 1 a.m., stopped in Dallas, and then that same plane continued on to Cincinnati. And the airport's, dead this time of night. I'm not really paying attention to anybody. So I give my ticket to the woman to walk down onto the plane, and in the jet bridge while we're waiting to board, I noticed the girl standing directly in front of me is Jessica Simpson. She's all by herself. And at that time she was married to Nick Lachey, who, as we've mentioned, is from Cincinnati and always seen around town. It's Thanksgiving. I thought that's probably where she's headed. And so just making conversation, I just said, so you going to Cincinnati? And she just turns around, she gives me this look and she's like, no. Why would I go to Cincinnati? And in my head, I was like, well, aside from the list of reasons I just came up with, is that a crazy question to ask anyone that's getting on a plane that's going to end up in Cincinnati? And normally I would say, something smart ass. And I kept my cool. I was really proud of myself. I was like, oh, I wasn't trying to pry. I'm sorry. I just thought maybe you're going to visit your husband for the holidays. I said, I'm a stand-up comedian. I've actually met him a couple of times. He's always been a really nice guy. And she goes, I'm sure you've met my husband. And then turned around and I was like, no, you didn't. I mean, because, I was upset. Like, I just feel that I, nor anyone should ever be treated that way. I don't care who you are or how many times I've downloaded pictures of you and photoshopped myself into them. Like, that's not the point right now. Like, I'm a human being. And I would have been able to get over it. I really would. I'm good at letting that kind of stuff go if I was sitting anywhere else on the plane. But I'm in the last row. I'm in the first row of coach, and she's in the last row of first class, just kind of across the aisle. So every time I look up, I see her. And every time I see her, I just get mad all over again, the whole flight. And so we land in Texas. I'm wide awake in the middle of the night to the point where I'm like, I'm getting off this plane. I'm going to get some food and then get back on before it takes off again. So I step out into the aisle. She's just waking up, takes off her sleep mask, gets all her stuff together. She ends up directly behind me while we're all in the middle waiting for the front door to open when I felt it. And it wasn't like my stomach hurts. It was, this is God letting me get my revenge for the way that I was treated a couple hours ago, you know? And even then I was like, I shouldn't do it. Cause if it makes a sound, everybody's going to obviously know it was me. And then also the power of the plane had been turned off. So the air wasn't circulating anymore. So there were going to be a lot of civilian casualties, but it was all I could do. I knew at that point it was going to be that story or no story. I can't call someone else for a better idea. It's in the moment. So I just throw it out there, and it's awful. I call it Unacceptable. The name of my album where this is recorded is called Unacceptable, because it was so bad. People were turning around like they might be able to see it in the air. It was just like this reaction, and I wanted to turn around to see if she was making a face, but I knew there's no way I could do it without laughing. So I'm just standing there like, keep it together. The war is over. Clearly, you're the winner. Let's get off this plane. And so we finally get off the plane, and I can hear people talking about like, oh my God, I don't think I've ever smelled anything. And so I've got this weird sort of pride I'm walking around with. And like, as a comedian, you say and do a lot of things that you think are hilarious, and none of them count until you ask someone who isn't a comedian, like, is this funny? So I call my best friend back here in Ohio where it's 4:30 in the morning. And he's like, hello. And I was like, dude, I'm sorry I woke you. I just had to tell someone that about 10 minutes ago, I farted on Jessica Simpson. And he was like, that's awesome. And I was like, thank you for saying that, because I knew if he liked it at 4:30, he was going to love it by noon. So that's, that's how I roll. If you disrespect me, there's a good chance. And I bring it, dude. I mean, like 6 months later, she's doing commercials for a Proactive Solution. Like, I never used to have acne. And it's like, well, maybe you should be nice to people and they wouldn't mess your face up.
Well, Josh, this is great. Anything else before we get him out of here?
What do you think is going to happen this 3-game series, Reds Rangers?
Listen, I think the Reds will dominate game 1 and then get blown out games 2 and 3. Like, that's just been their MO for this entire season so far. It's like they come out and you're like, oh, okay, maybe this is the turning around. And then the next day you're like, no, we suck again. And, it's a very interesting year for the Reds because I have the utmost confidence in our starting 3 pitchers in the rotation. Sure. I think Hunter Green, Lodolo, and Ashcraft like legitimately have the potential to be like dominating starting 3 for a long time. Yeah. I think that Jonathan India and Tyler Stevenson have proven they're not a flash in the pan from their rookie season and that they are something you can build around. I'm going to hate to see Votto go, but he is the last guaranteed money on the books and he's gone after this year. The farm system is loaded. I mean,
that Castillo trade was a good deal.
Ellie De La Cruz, Matt McLean, Christian Encarnacion-Strong, Marte, Arroyo. I mean, they have some studs in the minor leagues right now that they got from letting the few studs we had go. Luis Castillo, Tyler Mahle, those guys. So I do think the future is bright. I do hope we get to see them this year because I think that will take away from a painful season in the win-loss column. These guys are the future, and I can't wait to see them. But on a record level, it's going to be bad. And it's just sucks because literally 2 years ago, you thought they had something to build around when Castellanos was here and some of those other guys. They made the playoffs. It was a short run, but you're like, man, we could really have something special here. And then they just blew it up. And so I hope those days come back sooner rather than later, but I'll be there with my son and daughter anyway, rooting them on no matter how well they're doing, and just be happy that we're in the park.
Nick Lodolo, TCU, Fort Worth.
I have a lot of friends at the Reds that I won't name names, but a lot of guys think that he could end up being the guy even before Hunter Green. Just
Yeah.
With the way he pitches and as many pitches as he has, that once he really gets dialed in, that he could be the guy.
There you go.
Absolutely. Listen, guys, we're going to get out of here. Hey, Josh, we're going to get you back on sometime. This has been so much fun. When you come to town, we're going to do something, guys. We'll do a Rangers Today night, and we'll get all together and get out to the deal and do that. But Josh and I keep in touch, so we'll keep messing with each other. Now that he's down at my level on Twitter.
That's right. That's right. I got to interact with all the non-blue check marks now.
Gen Pop. We got back with the general population.
You're back with Gen Pop now. That's where you are. I tried.
Jeff, are you going to pay that? Are you going to pay that $8?
Oh no, I'm not going to pay.
I respect it.
Appreciate you.
Are you going to do it?
No.
I mean, he doesn't need a check mark.
I mean, if we could be honest here, like my career could use 7 or 8 different parody accounts of me. I could use that kind of. The more me's out there, the better. At this point.
There you go.
Well, Josh, we appreciate it, buddy. Last thing, anything else?
No, just thanks for coming on, taking all this time, and enjoy the series. And
guys, I'll come on anytime you'll have me talking about the Reds or just baseball or kicking it. You guys are awesome, and John, I appreciate you being so kind to me, and I really do hope our paths cross again soon.
Absolutely, that's Josh Sneed up in Cincinnati, brought to you by the Frisco Rough Riders. Josh, we'll see you next time, bud.
All right, boys, thank you.
You got it. That was a big thanks to Josh Sneed for coming on. That last story was hysterical.
Yeah, that's just a funny guy, man. And I think we could have just kept going. Once he brought up Fletch, I stumbled over Hanrahan, which I'm a little embarrassed about because the first Hanrahan in my comedy lexicon is Slapshot,
right?
Like I mentioned, but yeah, I mean that's such a good scene with Poon and anyway, Boyd Aviation, but. Yeah, it's a good time, and thanks again to Frisco for sponsoring our guests.
Absolutely. Speaking of Frisco, we're going to go down on the bus leagues.
Let's do it.
It's time to go down on the bus leagues. We're going to lay it out. Tell everybody where they're at right now. Down East Wood Ducks, they're 5-6 overall, 5-5 in the last 10. They've lost 5 in a row, so it hasn't been fantastic. They've had a little bit, but a couple guys to talk about there. Gutierrez, who has gone, he's hitting 286 with a home run, 724 OPS. Now, aside from a guy we're going to talk about that everybody has the consensus is probably the best prospect and the best outfielder in the organization, Gutierrez is a guy to watch.
Sure he is. He's 18, and he did not graduate from the Arizona Complex League last year, so this is a full season affiliate for him for the first time.
He's hitting close to 300.
Yeah, he's 18. Did we mention that? He's 18.
Right.
He's the guy, that international class and really not just of that class. He's already a top 10 guy, maybe a top 5 guy.
Right.
Just very talented, can do a lot of things, and they're struggling to hit down there.
They always do
in down east, but he's doing good. Not everybody's struggling. Ian Mahler's doing okay. Then Tucker Mitchell is hitting 563 entering play. Interesting story. He was in the 2021 draft, college kid from, I think, Florida State College of Manatee or something like that. Interesting in that he's from Irving, but he went to IMG Academy in Bradenton, Florida.
Yeah.
That's the big superstar place.
Yeah.
And the coach, his high school coach, was Kaysen Gabbard.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. How about that? Kaysen Gabbard's most famous contribution is being the jersey that Darren O'Day debuted in.
Former Ranger great Kaysen Gabbard.
Yeah, and so that's pretty interesting. But he's a little older. He debuted last year in the Complex League, then quickly went to down east and didn't do very good. Hit 185. So he, you're older, you're wiser, figuring things out. He's only played 5 games.
He's hitting 500 536 or something.
563, yeah.
Or something
He's only played 5 games, but it's better to get off to a good start than hitting 163.
Again, as a 22-year-old there. And then we got to talk about Brock Porter. He's probably the biggest.
Yeah,
he is, in fact, the biggest name there. Him are good hitters.
Good hitters, yeah. Porter, first outing was not good. Second outing, much, much better.
Yeah.
Pitched well enough to win. So, again, he's 18 or 19. You're going to just experience that stuff. Right. And these are the best hitters he's consistently faced. He did not debut last year after the Rangers selected him. So there's going to be some bumps. That's the
reality.
That's the reality of it, not just with him, but with that whole Down East team.
Yep.
So
then we go to High A. That's Hickory, the Hickory Crawdads. They are 6-4. By the way, 5-6 is the only losing record in the minor leagues right now. Hickory didn't start off great, Frisco didn't start off great, but they're winning too. But Hickory 6-4. They've finally played 10 games, so they are 6-4 in their last 10.
Yeah.
They've won a couple, and if we're going to go anyone there, you got to go Rocker.
Yeah. Obviously, he had his great debut. Last Tuesday, I think we talked about it on the show. Then he pitched against Sunday and tossed 3 scoreless innings. The reason only went 3 is because they're trying to get him back on schedule. They had some rainouts, and so anyway, he'll be back on normal schedule here. His next start, shoot, great so far. It's been a week. You gotta see it over a stretch. I know people are getting excited, but he's gonna hit a bump in the road at some point. And a bump may be giving up 4 and 5 innings.
Sure.
So he's not going to give up 8 and 2 or something like that. But I would expect that
he's got at least 4 or 5 more starts there. Maybe
I think he's going to be in Frisco by the beginning of June. I would think if it all goes well.
Right.
But there's some really good pitchers at Down East or Hickory, which we talked about. Mitch Pratt doing fine.
Yeah.
Emiliano Teodo had a little soreness in his forearm that they shut him down and skipped his last start.
And that is not a tear.
There's no structural
UCL
damage,
thing,
so
right.
he's going to be back on the mound. And then Winston Santos has had a couple rough ones the last couple of times, but again, early in the season.
Yeah.
I'm sure we're skipping a bunch of guys here. Josh Steffen from right up the street here.
Yeah.
He's been really, really good, and he's a guy.
He was really good last year.
He's a guy we got to get on the show too. But anyway,
local boy.
Yeah, bats wise, Alejandro Osuna,
who I followed last year at Down East. He had a great season at Down East last year.
He's
Mexico, right?
Yeah, he's a little more polished. He is from Mexico. His brother or uncle is Roberto Osuna, the Astros closer who got in trouble in Toronto. He's got a little polish on him. He had played a little bit in Mexico before signing with the Rangers, so he's a little bit ahead, but he's doing well. Cody Freeman had a walk-off hit the other night, so we like Cody.
Friend of the show.
Yeah. So they're
not many big offensive names there.
Right, and that's probably going to change as some of the guys from Down East get moved up. But, again, but it's early and they're dealing with weather and
right. Now we go to Double A. The sponsor of Josh Sneed, who we just heard.
That's right.
The Frisco Rough Riders partnering with us, guys. We're going to be doing some stuff out in Frisco this season. We're going to have some fun out there. Maybe we do a show out there. We'll
figure it out.
Whatever. We're going to do it. They are 6-5. They're 5-5 in their last 10. And they have won one. You can't talk enough about Evan Carter and what Evan Carter's doing right now.
Sure.
I mean, look, Adam Morris said it last week. I said this, and he said it again. In the entire organization, he's the second best outfielder in the entire organization. And I'm assuming, I didn't ask, but I think he's probably thinking Garcia Adolis is the number one outfielder in the entire organization. But right now, you've got to think higher, even of Jankowski and Leote and all of them. This guy's the biggest upside with what he's doing. Look, it's early. I know that you're saying he's got to go to AAA. That's what you think. But it is the Rangers, as good as Profar was when he was coming up and he was the number one prospect, I don't think a guy has this much upside and looks this mature and could be potentially something. I don't think they've had a guy like this since their system was bringing up Mark Teixeira, who was coming up, who could hit.
And had been to college.
And done all of that. He is just impressive at the plate. The other night, he had one hit, but he had 4 walks.
Yeah.
As a 20-year-old who's not even going to be 21 till the end of the summer.
Yeah.
Double-A. This is Double-A. He's not doing this at Down East.
Yeah, but it's 43 at-bats.
Of course.
I get it, let's see. It's Friday, so yesterday their game got suspended. So going into the game, though, he's batting 381, 3 homers. I think he'd walked 12 times and struck out 11. So, that's the ratio you're looking for. You just don't see it. Plays great defense. He's fast. Like you said, good head on his shoulder. He really impressed in spring training. He impressed the veterans with his routine and the way he went about things off the field, getting ready. So there's a lot there. There is a lot there. But again, he's played 3 weeks in his career at Double-A. It may stay great. It may stay this way.
Next week, if he's still if he's 350 or above, if he's still got the OPS up above 1,000. Look, this guy, of course, they all struggle at some point. Yeah. He hasn't yet this year. He really hasn't since he started as a pro.
Yes and no.
Injuries. He's had injuries.
Yeah, but he's going to be in Frisco for a while. I would say 6 weeks.
Right.
I would say he's going to play for 6 weeks before they really seriously say, okay, do we need to move him up? If at the 6 week point he still has a 1,000 OPS, I think I said 950 on the show last week. At that point, you're probably like, all right, we might need to do something.
You still think he needs to go to AAA?
I do think he has to go to AAA. It's just different.
I know.
It's just different.
But I think he could hit 8th or 9th in this lineup. Play center field or left field. Probably left field. I would still say Leote would probably stay in center field. But that guy playing left field, I still think he hits 220, 230, gets on base and walks the way he could. That could be a potential leadoff hitter right there.
Well, I think that a lot of the Evan Carter buzz may be fueled by Leote's struggles early on this year. And keep in mind with Leote, obviously he was hurt in spring training, didn't get a ton of at-bats. He was on rehab assignment, and the only reason he got called up was because
of the injury to
Corey Seager.
Yeah.
So he's still not ready, and the Rangers know it.
Right.
Okay. He is playing very good defensively. No doubts about that. He hasn't hit a home run, but he's shown some power when he's hit the ball.
Yeah.
He is coming off a 3-hit
Ball's
game.
coming off his bat hard.
He is coming off a 3-hit game. He just needs some more time before you can say, oh, this guy is not the answer this year. Or
I don't think it. I think it's left field that they're looking for somebody to fill in.
Maybe you're right.
I think Leote is the center fielder this year. Leote, and let me preface that because it came out wrong. It has nothing to do with Leote. I have total faith in Leote. I think Leote's the center fielder because of how good he is out in there. And yes, of course, he's going to struggle right now. He has not had spring training at bats.
Yeah.
It's just not happening. He's doing this spring training right now, and he would be doing this in Round Rock and in Frisco if not for the Corey Seager injury.
Yeah.
He would still be there right now.
Yeah.
But I could think of that outfield when you have Garcia, you have Leote, and then if you had Evan Carter in left field, who could potentially be a leadoff hitter who draws walks, who gets up there. That is a leadoff hitter. Yes, you want him to be about 20 pounds heavier with a little more pop in his bat for home runs, but he's hitting home runs right now.
Yeah.
But he's hitting the ball hard, too. He hit a single the other night. There was 109 off the bat to right field. It's just watching him at the plate is just freaking incredible.
Yeah. Well, again, great player, great prospect.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
But the Rangers are also winning.
Exactly.
And there's no need to rush.
Right.
There's no major.
No, and I do not think so either. But I'm saying when you start getting into June and they're saying, well, it's trade deadline. Do we need to go get Reynolds or whatever? Is Reynolds worth the prospects when you've got the guy that might could play your left field?
Yeah.
Reynolds is good, and I really do like Brian Reynolds. I think they're trying to extend him anyway.
Yeah.
And they're winning.
Not for long.
They're not going to be winning. Okay. All right. You know what? If we're going to talk about Double-A, though, there's good things. Like one of the things about Carter, I saw a deal, and I think it was it might have been Lucas that put it out, who saw most pitches in Double-A was Carter, and it was like far and away more than anybody else. Second in the entire Texas League, Dustin Harris, who is another one who started off good. He's hit the ball good. He has got such and that's another left fielder.
Sure.
So
or first baseman, but
or first baseman or whatever. But those are the good. If you're going to talk about the good, you got to talk about the bad. When is the time that we have to really start thinking, is Jack Leiter all we thought he was?
Not 3 starts.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know that he pitched poorly the other night.
He's got to get his fastball over the plate.
Well, when you talk to people with the Rangers, that's the number one thing. When it is over the plate, it's a really good pitch for him, and the sliders shown better. But he's pitching deeper into games. Some of that, last year they were kid gloving him, but I don't worry about it yet. I mean, it's
okay.
It's still just his second professional year, and you're 3 starts into it. The stuff's there.
His stuff is
the fastball characteristics are better. That's what everybody was.
His slider is one of the best sliders in minor leagues.
Was worrying about. The fastball characteristics weren't the same at Vanderbilt. Well, they've gotten it back.
Yeah.
He's got to put it in the strike zone.
Yeah.
And
he keeps missing outside, and I don't know. You would think when you keep consistently missing in the same spot, there's an adjustment you got to make to bring that ball back over the plate somehow. Mm-hmm. His stuff is major league caliber stuff, but man, he is not finding it. And I know it's 3 starts into this season. He pitched the entire year. For all his struggles last year, he stayed and did all his innings last year. Yeah. Like Co-Win at AAA and doing that. White is, obviously the ace of that staff right now, in my opinion, is Owen White, who had another decent start. I think his fastball's not sitting where we like it. I mean, he was hitting 95, 96, 97 up in there, and I think he's sitting right around 94, 95. But he's got 4 pitches.
Well, he was slowed during spring training.
Right.
So he's a little bit behind everybody. So he's still trying to build his arm strength up. The start was fine the other day until he wore out.
Right.
So, that's just a hurdle you got to clear. He's got to build the arm strength. If he gets a little dead arm, he's got to pitch through that. But, yeah, White is fine. Leiter's going to be fine. And I don't think it's wishful thinking. There's baseball acumen behind it.
Sure.
I like TK Roby there.
Yep. And he's actually done okay too. He's done pretty well.
There's good news on the Ricky Vanasco front. He's in Arizona.
Yeah, we called him the other day. He was getting on the plane.
He's going to be back. He could be back next week.
Yeah.
Then
you always have Ryan Garcia there.
Our one of our just favorite guys.
Yeah, just a great guy.
And he's been doing fine.
But this is where he needs to be as AA. He's at the age where he needs to be here performing.
Yeah. So anyway, I wouldn't worry about Leiter. Just let him do his thing. And then if in 6 starts, after 6 starts, it's still the same and it's a mess, then they'll work on it. I mean, they're probably working on it right now.
Sure. Yeah.
But he's a cerebral guy.
Okay.
I think he gets ready in his own way, and it's just
okay.
We'll see.
I agree. I'm doing it. But there is one guy in this entire system who is by far and away doing better than anyone in the Rangers organization, and he's in AAA. And we're going to go to Round Rock AAA. They're 12-5 overall. They have played more games because they started the day after the Rangers opened. 7-3 in their last 10. They've won 2. And the ace of all, the guy that is outperforming everyone right now is another big friend of the show, and that's Cody Bradford.
Oh my gosh. Oh.
I mean, he is, and this is a guy sitting 91, 90, 91, 92. He doesn't blow you away with that fastball. But, at Baylor, he was amazing. He was, the ace of that staff at Baylor.
Yeah,
Wenzel praised him and the way he was. I think he was younger than Wenzel and, when he came in. And then he got hurt at Baylor, didn't he? Hurt?
He had to have thoracic outlets. And he had thoracic outlet syndrome and had to have surgery.
And remember last year he struggled at first. He started struggling last year at AA.
Right.
And then all of a sudden it just clicked. He got it together, and then he got promoted up to AAA. But he's been amazing. He might be the first guy that gets a look if they need it.
Yeah,
and he's not on the 40-man.
Right. This year he's won all 4 of his starts 0.77 ERA Thursday night
really
at Sacramento.
Night. Yeah.
He allowed a run in 7 innings. When
Sacramento, didn't the ball fly there?
I think so.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I've never been there. And
Okay.
I like all the cities in the U.S. I've been to. Sacramento is not one of them.
Okay.
But he really impressed a lot of guys who you need to impress in spring training. One of the guys who he impressed was Greg Maddux. And,
who is that guy again?
Yeah. If you're impressing Greg Maddux, that ain't bad, And so he is onto something. He was not protected from the Rule 5 draft last year,
and nobody
which
took
was
a
little surprising. Nobody took him, so he stayed in the system. He will be protected, no doubt.
If he's not brought up already before the end of the year.
Right, at some point he's going on that 40-man roster, and
yeah,
you kind of what we talked about in the theoretical scenario of a starter getting hurt. Well, then you move. Let's say Dunning into the rotation. Dunning's given a lot of valuable multiple inning efforts.
God, he's been good.
So who do you call up? Do you call up? Joe Barlow,
right,
who pitched 2 innings the other night, but is really a 1-inning guy?
Right.
Do you call him up? Do you call up a Zach Luttrell, who's not on the 40-man, or Jacob Barnes, another guy with major league experience, but they're not on the 40-man? Or do you go get John King can pitch multiple innings, and he pitched behind Bradford and tossed 2 scoreless innings Thursday? Or do you go get Bradford because you feel like I need a guy we may need a 4-inning outing,
right?
And he might be the guy, because you look
Jacob DeGrom might have a wrist soreness.
You look at Cole Reagans, and they've kind of put Cole in some different spots.
Yep.
I mean, he's pitched in extra innings. He's entered with a man on base. These are scenarios that I don't think they ever envisioned putting him in, but he's responded well to all of them. So they're giving him a little more leash and letting him do different things. So who would you call up? And Cody Bradford might be the guy, or maybe you like the way the bullpen is and you don't want to screw with it. And so you're like, we need a start. So let's get Cody Bradford up here for a start.
Make a start. Yeah.
It just, again, with the 40-man roster limited, because a lot of the prospects that are had to be protected from the Rule 5, there's not a ton of roster flexibility, honestly.
Right.
So if you needed one start,
you're probably going to go a 40-man guy. You're probably going to go a Cohen.
Well, you'd probably go with Dunning and then put Barlow in, but I don't know if it's multiple starts. Do you want to keep the status quo, and would you at that point consider Bradford?
Right. And now Wynn, on the other end of the spectrum, again is having some issues.
Yeah, no. You look at the lines.
It's got over 7 ERA.
I know.
Right now.
You look at the lines, but
Didn't you tell me someone told you
the
his
people
stuff
are
is
watching
playing?
him, and they're seeing good stuff. And again,
Is he falling behind again?
His last outing was he gave up 5 runs. This final score of that game was 17-9 in Sacramento. So maybe the wind was blowing out, or maybe Sacramento was a little higher elevation. I really don't know. It's probably arid there, so maybe the ball flies. But the one thing when you're not watching these guys, and I'm guilty of this, you look at the line score and you're like, it's not very good. But then you don't know, did a play not get made behind him that shouldn't have been made? Did the umpire blow a call at first that everybody in the world...
Did they dink 4 hits in a row that fell in?
Was it 3 C9 singles, and then he hung a pitch for a 3-run double? And that's... But the last report I got from somebody
in the know
said that was the best he'd seen Cole win in a long time.
Wow. Okay.
So
I am guilty. I have not watched it. I get on MILB and I do watch some of the games and try to watch them, but I didn't watch. Okay. All right. So on the offensive side, basically Martinez, Foskew's starting to get a little hot.
Yeah, hit a grand slam the other night.
There's just not a lot of offense. I mean, again, Wenzel is struggling. He's hitting below 200 again.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of those guys are. Sam Huff is hitting below 200.
Yeah, guys we like a lot.
Yeah, John Ornelas has picked it up a little bit. I know his average doesn't look good, but it's
he started out really bad.
It's gone up, so he's getting comfortable, and he's batting leadoff. So that's interesting.
Yeah.
But Yeah, they're not too worried about the bats. It's probably a little too early to jump in, though. They did give Davis Wenzel a couple days off last week to work on some stuff. That's why you saw Blaine Krim at third base.
Yeah,
because he was in there because they wanted to give Davis some time off. So, and I think that's cool that Blaine's playing some third. Apparently, he's looked okay over there.
We like another friend of the.
We know Blaine, and Blaine's just going to hit for you. So, anyway, again, the overriding thing is it's early, and we'll see what happens here in a couple weeks. But
we are in full season, and every week we're going to have updates at every level,
right?
Because that's what we do here.
Yes, sir.
And we are, and unlike the last few months, we are actually talking about games, and they are all playing real games, so it's fun.
Yep.
Anything else before we shut her down?
No, we had a great show.
We had a great show, a long one, guys. I know.
Be long. We'll try to split it up a little bit.
Yeah, we'll get it clipped up and try to do that for fun too. But if you enjoy it, you can clip to it, come back to it. It was a great time. Big thanks to Josh Sneed for coming on.
Yep.
What fun. We'll get him on again. He's you see a comedian like that, he knows his stuff in baseball.
Sure. Oh yeah.
He knew it. I mean, that was just impressive. He's not just talking the talk. He's telling stories that I could tell from my old Ranger fan days.
Yeah.
And he talks about I get to meet all these celebrities, but I get to meet these old baseball players. George Foster.
That's a cool one.
That's a cool one. I remember him, one of the first home run derbies I ever saw in an All-Star game, and he won it, and he hit 4. Something like that. It was crazy. They're playing in Boston. Anyway, guys, we thank you. Big thanks to the Frisco Rough Riders for sponsoring that. We are selling sponsorships. There's another big thing that's coming with this show. We can't talk about it yet. There's still negotiations going on the other side before our part, but it's happening. And it's going to happen this year, and it's coming. But we've got some other sponsorships already lined up that will be coming.
Yep.
And we'll be talking about that later. Right now, Frisco's on board, and they're sponsoring our guests for now. Big thanks to Frisco Rough Riders. And go out to Frisco if you're in the Metroplex and you want to go out and see some good baseball. The guys that we've been harping on are there.
Yep.
And you can go out and watch some great baseball, guys. Guys, that's it. We're going to be out the ballpark tonight. You're going to see this. It's already going to be over with. But until next time, see you at the yard.